Hello and welcome to Cheshire Audio. Now then, this video is just it's going to be a bit chopped about, and there's reasons for that. It's basically just to put people's minds at rest. I've had a few phone calls, actually I've had quite a lot of phone calls about this. And it tends to be when people have had an older Rega and then gone and bought the new one. And they have concerns. And it's because they sometimes make a bit of a weird noise. Which I'll show a clip of in a sec, and this is the reason everything's chopped around. My Rega 3 tends to do it, or the shop Rega 3 tends to do it most times, really, when you switch on. And I did a long, very involved video explaining why and giving examples and going all through it, and then walked across to my Rega 3, switched it on, and it didn't do it. So I've scrapped all that and I've started again. So I've just, this morning when I came in and the deck was cold, which tends to be the worst time for it actually. I've done a clip of that and I will slot that clip in at some point. Okay, so demonstration of Rega startup noise, hopefully. So I'll switch on. Oh, that was a good one. Okay, so up to speed, and like I say, Rega have always recommended that you actually give the platter a push before you switch on, so just to show that. Silent. So yeah, there's the principle of it anyway. Yeah, what it is that sometimes when you switch the deck on and it comes up to speed, you hear a squeal noise. And I've had people ring up saying, do I need to oil something? Is it the bearing? Is it the motor? Is there something wrong with it? Do I need to bring it in? And it does worry me a little bit that people are there poised with WD-40 ready to zap something that's, well, if it's squeaking, therefore you coat it in WD-40. No, it isn't a fault. Interestingly, and this sounds awfully like a salesman, it's a bit of a sign of the fact that the Rega has advanced so much. And that is kind of the cause of it. The way they've honed everything and it's so rigid now, there's got to be a break point, and that is kind of where it is really. What I'll do, I'll show you an earlier deck, because the earlier decks didn't do it at all. Most turntables do have a bit of a start-up noise. You'll get a bit of a grumble from some decks. Sort of grumble and shudder and do all sorts of things when they're starting up. Yeah, most suspended decks, you'll find that there'll be a bit of a shake from them as they start up, and it's losing the energy of the initial torque of the motor, trying to move the weight of the platter. Early Regas, and I'll show you one actually. I'll have to move rooms, but I'll just show you the difference with the earlier Rega. Yeah, so this is an earlier Rega, and I've taken the platter off just to show you the difference with the motor on these. The early motors are suspended under. Obviously, there's a drive band here, but there's also another band underneath that the motor is suspended off, and it's very loose. Some people get very worried about that they move so much, but it's intentional to isolate, because this is a mains motor, and the mains motors tended to be a lot physically noisier. They had a certain level of vibration from them. You didn't want that vibration coming into the deck, so it hangs off a belt. A sort of benefit of that in a way is that on the start-up torque of the motor trying to start up the platter, most of the reaction of that will be absorbed within this movement of the motor. So you didn't get as much effect from it really. Also, these older pulleys, this I think it's probably still the phenolic resin, like the subplatter. It's quite dead, so it doesn't seem to resonate or do anything really. You don't hear any grumbling from it. So yeah, that's the earlier deck. That's why they tend not to do it. Sometimes you get a bit of noise. Sometimes actually, you'll actually hear the motor hit the plinth like that when they start up, which is the reason that Rega used to say give them a push before they start, and push the platter, then press on, and that was the recommendation. But nobody ever really does that, to be honest. I don't do that. So anyway, back to the chair. So moving on to the sort of current Rega 3. Obviously, we've not got the suspended motor anymore because we're now running 24 volt, and that is a much quieter motor. It doesn't need to be massively isolated from the plinth anymore, so it's a pretty solid fix. I mean, there's a little bit of isolation, but it's absolutely minimal. So there's not really any kick from the motor when the platter starts up. They've also now moved on to the metal pulley, which isn't as dead. It's more accurate. It's much a better machined thing. It's better in every way, except it does have probably a fairly high level resonant frequency. It's probably up sort of 1 kilohertz upwards somewhere. It's so the noise you're getting is the belt slipping on the now rigid pulley. There's nowhere for the energy to go. So you get this little bit of slippage when it starts up. Like I say, pretty much every deck, when it starts up, the belt will slip a little bit. But once you're up to speed, then everything's fine. With the Rega, you just hear this as this little bit of a squeal. Like I say, some decks, the Rumble, Aristons, and the old system decks used to. Even things, even some of the decks where the belt runs around the outside of the platter, some of the projects I've noticed will squeal a little bit when they start up. So it's not unusual. It's not, like I say, it isn't a fault. It's one of these weird things that they've developed the deck so much over the years, and this kind of thing has sort of appeared, which wasn't there before. But it's not really doing any harm. It's just a little bit worrying when say if you had an old deck and you go to the new one squeaks when you start up. But like I said, don't worry about it. It's just see it as a feature. Weirdly, some do it more than others. I mean, I've noticed the P1s and P2s. P1 you never really hear it on a P1. P2 occasionally. P3 seems to be, well, probably P3 and P6 seem to be the ones that do it the most. The 8 and the 10 don't, because they're twin belts on those, and they don't seem to do it. I've never heard one do it. But yeah, certainly 3 and 6, because they've got the heavier platter for the single belt, really. They seem to have a little bit more tendency to do that. But some decks never do it, some do it more, some do it less. It seems to somehow be related to humidity and situations or whatever. There are ways around it. Like I say, if you give it a push start, then that cues it. I suppose, and I shouldn't even say this online because you shouldn't really try this. Years ago, to try and counter this on suspended decks, because some suspended decks, if there was too much of a grip point between the belt and pulley, they would actually kick the belt off because the suspension would react so much. It unsettled everything and the belt would kick off. And people used to get talcum powder or like chalk dust, like the stuff you used to use when you were fixing a puncher on an inner tube, you know, that little sanding thing, and you'd get the chalk dust, and they'd sort of put that on the belt, and it would give it a bit of slippage when it started up, which you would have thought would be worse, but actually it was almost like a lubrication of this powder on there would stop any noise. It kind of defeats the object of having a good grippy belt, really, but if it really annoyed you, you could do that. Just don't do that. Forget I said that. In fact, I'm regretting it already. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully that's put people's minds at rest. And like I say, it's not just Rega, lots of decks do it, but it seems, because I deal with a lot of people with Rega, I do get a lot of calls about it. So anyway, hopefully, like I say, it's put your minds at rest. I'm going to leave it there. It's a Saturday afternoon. I'm freezing. I've just cleaned the windows. My hands I can hardly feel. But that's just my problems. Anyway, yeah, thanks for all the likes and the whatever. We're nearly on, what are we up to now? We're nearly on 7,000 subscribers now. That's completely, isn't that bonkers? That is completely bonkers. I don't understand how 7,000 people can want to keep seeing videos of me waffling on about hi-fi. Can't even say it. I'll see you in a future video. Thanks very much. I'm going to stop now before I go off on any more tangents. Thank you very much. See you soon.